Hey, what's going on there, guys? Nick here from Absolute MTG, and today we're going to be taking a look at a deck tech for Black-White Budget Warriors. Khans of Tarkir block has given us a lot of really cool things to be able to play with in formats like Standard. However, if we want things down and just take a look at things from a budget or a casual player perspective, one of the big archetypes that seems to stand out and that they seem to have tried to push the hardest has been Warriors within the block. So here I have for you guys a budget Warriors deck that is predominantly from the Khans of Tarkir block. The only exceptions are the Obelisk of Urd that we're playing in the main board, which are really sweet whenever you're playing Tribal, and a Banishing Light in the sideboard to give us a little bit more removal. So to start things off, we have 4 1-drops that are conveniently enough 2 power 1 toughness creatures. So the first one is Mardu Woe-Reaper. So whenever the Woe-Reaper enters the battlefield, or we have another warrior enter the battlefield under our control, we can exile a creature from a graveyard, and if we do, we gain life, which is really sweet if anybody's playing any graveyard-type shenanigans. We also have 4 Dragon Hunter, which is a little bit more narrow in being like a hate card, but we want to be playing it just because it's a 2 power 1-drop for us. It has protection from dragons, and it can block dragons as though it had reach. For our 2-drop creatures in the deck, we are playing 3 playsets of different creatures. So the first one is our Chief of the Edge, which will make our warriors have more power. So other warrior creatures we control get +1/+0, and it's a 3/2 creature for 2. Likewise, we have a Chief of the Scale for toughness for our warrior creatures. So other warrior creatures that we control get +1/+0 as long as we control the Chief of the Scale. And it's a 2/3 creature for 2, 1 white and 1 black. And then our last set of 2-drop creatures in the deck, we have our Seeker of the Way. So Seeker of the Way is a little bit less impressive as far as combining things into just making our other warriors bigger like the Chiefs actually do. However, it's really sweet that this creature has prowess, and whenever we cast a non-creature spell, it gains lifelink until the end of the turn, on top of being a 2/2 for 2. So whenever we're casting like our Secure the Waste, Ultimate Price, or like Valorous Stance for the turn, or even an Obelisk of Urd, our Seeker of the Way is going to get a little bit bigger, and it's also going to gain lifelink until the end of the turn, which could help us out for some of the more grindy, aggressive matchups. For our 3-drop slot for our creatures, we have a playset of Mardu Hordechief, so it's a 2/3 for 3 with Raid, and whenever it enters the battlefield, if we attack with a creature for this turn, we get to put a 1/1 white warrior creature token onto the battlefield. So it even further pushes us to be able to stack our board horizontally and just throw more creatures out there. And for our 4-drop slot for creatures, we have 3 Brutal Hordechief, which is the most expensive card in the deck as far as cost goes, and he's about $6 a piece at the time of this recording. So the Brutal Hordechief is a 3/3 for 4, and whenever a creature that we control attacks, defending player is going to lose 1 life and we gain 1 life. And for 5 mana, you can also manipulate how your opponent's actually going to be blocking for the turn. So you can force your opponent's creatures to have to block if able, and you're also going to choose how those creatures block for 3 and double split Boros. Now, as far as our non-creature spells are concerned, I would have to say that Obelisk of Urd is definitely our centerpiece that brings everything together here. So, the Obelisk is a 6-cost artifact with Convoke, and as it enters the battlefield, we choose a creature type, which for us is going to be Warriors. Creatures that we control with the chosen type get +2/+2. So the sweet thing about the Obelisk is that it has Convoke. So hypothetically, if we go turn 1, play a 1-drop, turn 2, play 2 more 1-drops, and then turn 3, hit our land, we can Convoke with our 3 creatures, and by tapping our 3 lands to actually play the Obelisk on turn 3 and just have an Anthem sitting out on the board giving our creatures +2/+2. Another card that works really well with our Obelisk of Urd is actually our Secure the Wastes, which is a really sweet addition that we have from Dragons of Tarkir. So it's a instant speed X and 1 white spell that puts X amount of 1/1 white warrior creature tokens onto the battlefield. Now, this is great because if we don't have our Obelisk out and we need to find a way to actually be able to Convoke into our Obelisk, we can make a few tokens and then next turn hopefully tap those tokens into our Obelisk and reduce the cost of it. Or even if we have our Obelisk already out there, we can just make a whole bunch of 3/3 tokens now with our Obelisk out there, or even bigger if we have multiple Obelisks out. For our remaining non-creature spells in the deck, we have 2 Ultimate Price to be able to destroy mono-colored creatures, and 2 Valorous Stance to either be able to give one of our creatures indestructible for the turn, or to also have a little bit more removal for creatures with toughness 4 or greater. Now, as far as the land base is concerned for this deck, we are definitely cutting back on actually spending money on expensive lands or anything like that. We're playing a few playsets of tap lands. So we have a playset of Scoured Barrens, a playset of Nomad Outpost, and a playset of Sandsteppe Citadel, which all will enter the battlefield tapped and will provide white or black mana for us for the purpose of this deck. However, if you guys have cards like Mana Confluence or Caves of Koilos or even Temple of Silence, which is really sweet with the Scry, those would be some more expensive substitutions that, if you have them or if you want to splurge the money for them, would definitely make the mana base a whole lot better. Now for our sideboard here, I have 2 copies of Erase. So Erase is really great for the standard format because it gets rid of cards that are troublesome like Mastery of the Unseen, Courser of Karufix, Jeskai Ascendancy, and Whip of Erebos. We have a playset of Duress, which is great for any of the matchups where your opponent's playing a lot of non-creature spells. So decks where your opponent's playing a lot of removal spells, counter spells, or even like a bunch of planeswalkers, you want to side in your Duress and be able to strip away what your opponent has in their hand and what they may try to use against you in the following turns. We have a Singleton Rush of Battle for the really aggressive matchups, so anybody that's trying to just outrace you and just beat you before you actually beat them with attacking with creatures. We want to have our Rush of Battle just so we can gain back a little bit of life and also make a little bit more of an impact as far as attacking with our creatures goes. Even just gaining back the life off of the Rush of Battle is really sweet most times. We have 2 Radiant Purge for the decks that are playing a bunch of multicolored creatures predominantly. That's mainly the reason why we want to actually have our Radiant Purge there, so it's kind of like the substitute for the Ultimate Price that is in the main board. There's one more Valorous Stance whenever you want to either protect your creatures or just have another way to get rid of like some of the creatures that your opponents have. If they're playing a bunch of Siege Rhinos and Coursers and Tassikers, then you can side in the Valorous Stance and just have a little bit more removal for your opponent's really big creatures. The one Banishing Light is really great just as a all-around removal for any permanents that your opponents have. So if they're playing a bunch of like really good enchantments, things like Mastery of the Unseen or Whip of Erebos, or even any of the Ascendancies, you can side into Banishing Light against them. If your opponent's playing any valuable Planeswalkers, you can side in the Banishing Light for them as well. Or even if your opponent has high-end creatures, the light ends up being a easy way to get rid of the problems that you may actually encounter. There are 2 Glare of Heresy for just kind of the more narrow implications of you playing against white decks. So if your opponent's playing a lot of white permanents, planeswalkers, creatures, anything like that, you can side in the Glare of Heresy and have some pretty narrow but very specific and very good removal for those types of cards. And then just 2 more Ultimate Price to be able to take care of monocolored creatures. So if your opponent's playing a monocolored creature deck, even if they're playing like 2 colors, but all their creatures are always just going to be monocolored, you can side in the Ultimate Price and just have a easy way to deal with any of their value creatures that they might be playing. So that about wraps up our deck tech here for Black-White Budget Warriors. If you guys enjoyed this video and would like to see more content like this, I would appreciate it if you hit the like button on the video and subscribe to the channel for more Magic the Gathering content. Like I mentioned previously in the video, this deck is just really cheap to put together, and it's a whole lot of fun to actually be able to play. The entire deck list is going to be in the description below where you guys can check it out and use it as a reference, and there's also going to be a deck list via DeckStats.net, and on there's going to be some real-time pricing and updates on price changes that you guys can use as a reference as well, and you can decide whether you want to purchase some or all of the cards online or even just at your local card shop to put this deck together. Thank you guys for watching, and until next time, peace out.